Na 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 na.
Hey YouTube, my name is Vin. I like to play games, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Vin Plays Yahoo Fantasy Football. This is my Week 16 starter show where I go over my matchups against my opponents and my thoughts on who I should start for the week. So let's go ahead and dive into it. Here we are, Championship Week. Big shout out, thanks to everyone who's been watching and going through this journey with me. Who would have thought it? We're here. Cut to the Paul Rudd gif here.
Look at us. Look at us. Huh? Who would have thought? Not me.
But anyways, here we are, a chance to win it all. And we're looking at a pretty high hill to climb against Von like Donkey Kong here. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's go ahead and jump into our team first to see who I picked up on the waiver wire. I ended up spending the rest of my fab for the Chicago Bears, or not the Chicago Bears, I picked those guys up last week. But for the Washington football team, again, I was playing defense against Von like Donkey Kong, so to try to keep him away from this defense, I blew all of my fab, which ended up being $15 for that defense. Not that it really would have stopped him, because I believe he had about 60 fab left on his budget, so he has been very stingy with his fab this year. But I also picked up Jalen Hurts here. I'm not intending to sit Aaron Rodgers, but just to play keep away a little bit again. Not that I need to play keep away against Von like Donkey Kong, because Von like Donkey Kong does have Patrick Mahomes. But just for another option in case something happens to Aaron Rodgers, knock on wood. But Jalen Hurts has been balling out. Last game against Arizona, 43 points, the number one quarterback on the week last week, and he has an even better matchup this week against Dallas. So, just having him in our back pocket just in case. We also ended up picking up, well, actually, I forgot to talk about this during our last episode, the recaps show, but I ended up picking up Tony Pollard late last week on Sunday when I heard that Ezekiel Elliott was going to be sat, or wasn't going to play, that is. And thank goodness we did pick him up, because he ended up being one of the, I don't remember if he was the number one running back last week, but one of the top 3 running backs last week. And I was really trying to keep him away from mainly my opponent at the time, Blue Balls. But I'm also a little bit sad that I picked him up, because we really needed to pick him up to play defense. But we ended up dropping Antonio Gibson for him. And it's really starting to look like Antonio Gibson is trending towards playing. Not that I would have started him this week, but spoiler alert, I'll go over this a little bit more when we get to our matchups. But guess who picked up Antonio Gibson for this week? Yes, Von like Donkey Kong. But anyways, the last guy I picked up, and this is just more for a good luck charm, is Randall Cobb. I ended up dropping Deebo Samuel, who is pretty much out for the rest of the year. And I have a soft spot for Randall Cobb, just because he used to be on the Packers, my favorite team. And I drafted him way back in the day when Jordy Nelson got hurt and all the rage was on him. He kind of disappointed then. But anyways, just for team morale and just as a good luck charm, I picked up Randall Cobb because he's a big team guy, he's a good guy, and I just really like Randall Cobb and what he's done with the Packers over his career. But anyways, that so much goes over who we picked up. Let's go ahead and jump into our matchup. Like I said before, this is going to be a pretty tough hill to climb. Von like Donkey Kong has been our number one competition this year. He's been a really good team for basically start to finish this year. And looking at our projections, it's pretty much a coin flip. I'm projected to win by 1 point, but you know how the projections go. These things aren't really very accurate. But looking at our projections and looking at my opponent's team, I have to say, most of the explosive players are on Von like Donkey Kong's team. But let's go ahead and jump into the individual matchups. Of course, we're going to be starting Aaron Rodgers, and he has a great matchup too against Tennessee. Tennessee and the Green Bay Packers. I was actually just watching the Fantasy Footballers podcast earlier, and Tennessee and the Green Bay, they are in the top, I believe that they said they were in the top 5 worst defenses for the year. So this should be a really smash spot for Aaron Rodgers and all players, all fantasy relevant players in this game are set up for a smash spot, for a good game. So, knock on wood, Aaron Rodgers does bounce back from last week's kind of pedestrian performance, and he hits the ground running and he performs how he's been performing, or hopefully, fingers crossed that he gives us a big game, more towards the 40 points than the 25-30, and we're going to need it against our opponent. But let's go ahead and jump over to our opponent's quarterback, of course, Patrick Mahomes. Not only does he have Patrick Mahomes, but Patrick Mahomes has the best matchup of the year, or is against the best matchup of the year here against Atlanta, who you can see it right there, number one defense against quarterbacks, or 31st best, I should say, defense against quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes is super scary this week, and we're really going to need something special from our team in order to compete with the output that I'm foreseeing Patrick Mahomes puts up this week. Maybe game script wise, they just run up the score really big, and maybe they're running a bunch of touchdowns, knock on wood. And maybe Patrick Mahomes doesn't need to do too much. He gets rested during the fourth quarter. Hopefully something like that happens, but otherwise I am really foreseeing a blow-up game here from Patrick Mahomes. Going to our wide receiver core, of course we're going to be starting Davante Adams. I don't really need to talk too much about Davante Adams. He's been a stud for most of this year. He did have a down game last week, but hopefully during this week he bounces back and he gives us that floor, that 15 to 20 point floor. And he has the upside to score like 30 to 40 points. Just looking at his game log here, like the week 1, 34 points, week 7, 38 points, almost 40 points. He could easily do that. That's well within the realm of possibility for this week. So knock on wood again, we really need that kind of explosion this week, I believe, to succeed against Von like Donkey Kong. But going down the list, I have Allen Robinson, and he has another cherry matchup here. Like last week though, he had a cherry matchup as well. Game script will be a concern here. If David Montgomery gets 30 carries again, then that will really eat into everybody else's workload, including Allen Robinson. But that being said, Jacksonville's defense has been putrid for the entire year. So as far as defense is concerned, you really can't ask for much better than Jacksonville. The only thing is, if they do rely on that run again, game script could be against us and could be against Allen Robinson having a good game. Let's go ahead and jump over to the other side. Calvin Ridley. Kansas City does have a good defense, particularly against wide receivers. Their secondary has been pretty good. It's their run defense that has been suspect for most of the year. But anyways, Calvin Ridley has been tearing it up. The last couple of games, 27 points, 22 points. His floor is around 15. I want to say it looks like 12 to 15 points. So Calvin Ridley, he'll probably score around there again this week. I'm moderately afraid of Calvin Ridley. I'm moderately concerned about this matchup. What can you do though? That's why Von like Donkey Kong is in the championship, because he has this caliber of player in his lineup. He drafted this well. So going down the line though, Cooper Kupp against Seattle. That, like I said last video, that number 2 ranking for Seattle for wide receivers, I really believe that's a red herring. Seattle has been doing a lot better against wide receivers and just has been a better defense in general the last few games. And actually, I was listening to another podcast, the CBS podcast actually, and I believe Adam Aizer said that Seattle hasn't let a wide receiver score a touchdown for the last 6 games. So I think this is a really, this could be a really bad matchup. I think Seattle has been playing a lot better the last few weeks. 12 points I think is kind of high for Cooper Kupp this week. Knock on wood that we're not jinxing ourselves again. But anyways, I'm not too concerned about Cooper Kupp in his starting lineup this week, but you know what, Cooper Kupp as your second wide receiver, that is not bad at all. But yeah, I think his ceiling is kind of capped here with Cooper Kupp. Going over to our running backs, we do have Nick Chubb, and you know what, Nick Chubb is a stud. He's been a stud ever since he's been back from injury during week 10, I believe. Yeah, during week 10. He did have a kind of down game last week against the Giants, and now is against the Jets, who have been showing signs of life. You know what, last week they had that upset win against the Rams, but we can't sit Nick Chubb. You know, he's a threat to score anywhere on the field. He could easily run in break a couple of tackles and run in a 70-yard touchdown. So there's not much we could say about Nick Chubb except that we are starting him, and we are starting him with full confidence. Although, you know, maybe not as full of confidence as we would be against maybe Jacksonville, like in week 12, or even during week 10 against Houston. But he is a top 8 play for this week. And then secondarily, we do have Josh Jacobs. You know what, I'm a little bit concerned here about Josh Jacobs. He's playing against Miami, who has also been a very good defense for most of this year. Very much so the case the second half of this year. Josh Jacobs, you know what, he will get the workload. He got a ton of carries last week. I believe 20 plus carries, yeah. 26 carries last week, but you know what, he still is dealing with nagging injuries. So against a stout Miami defense, we are pretty concerned. I don't think I could sit Josh Jacobs. Our options on our bench are the likes of DeAndre Swift and J.K. Dobbins. I'll talk about them a little bit more when I talk about my flex. But as of right now, Josh Jacobs is in my starting lineup, and you know what, I don't really see how I could sit him, all things considered. But you know, tempered expectations with Josh Jacobs this week. We are concerned about that Miami defense. Going over to my opponent's side, of course, he has Alvin Kamara against a cherry matchup in Minnesota, another super plus matchup. And not only that, Drew Brees is back, and so that really raises the ceiling of Kamara all the way back up to number 1. He could easily be the number 1 running back for the week. Alvin Kamara is super concerning. This week he's super concerning. Yeah, there's not much we could say about Alvin Kamara. You know, he's going to smash this week, and we are going to have to hope that our players are up to the task to perform equally as well, or equally or better than Alvin Kamara this week. I am very concerned about him. Going next is David Johnson. You know what, he has been a surprisingly solid running back 2 for the year, and he has another great matchup here against Cincinnati. He has not been getting it done on the ground. His yards per carry has been really low, and he hasn't even been getting a lot of opportunities, as you can see there, 8 points and 10 points the last 2 games he played. But he has been killing it through the air. 11 targets and 11 receptions last game. And you know, he has a lot better matchup this week against Cincinnati. He could easily finish within the top 15. I am pretty concerned, not super concerned, but moderately concerned about David Johnson this week. You know what, they're going to pass a lot. Von like Donkey Kong, he has a really solid team here, a really good team, including David Johnson. You know, as your number 1 receiver, David Johnson isn't that great, but as your number 2, that is super solid. Going down to our tight end position, you know what, we do have Darren Waller. Darren Waller has been a stud as well the last few games. You know, over 20 points the last 2 games, a down game last week. Well, not even really a down game. That is his floor at 11 points against Indianapolis, especially considering how desolate the tight end position has been this year. 11 points is super awesome as your floor. So, you know, we're hoping for another plus game this week again. Miami's defense, again, has been rough. So it's going to be very much an uphill battle for him to put up. You know, his ceiling is probably capped, but he'll have to break away and have some monster plays in order to put up those kinds of points. Knock on wood that, you know, luck is on our side and on his side. You know, maybe some of that juju from Randall Cobb, you know, will spread from our team. You know, maybe we'll put up we'll pick up a couple of more good luck charms off of the waiver wire. We'll see about that. But yeah, Darren Waller, you can't ask for much more when it comes to Darren Waller at your tight end position. He has been easily the number 2 tight end for the entire year. The only one better though than Darren Waller for the year has been Travis Kelce, who is on our opponent's team. Von like Donkey Kong, Travis Kelce against Atlanta. Patrick Mahomes passing to Travis Kelce against Atlanta. I am shaking in my shoes right now. This is super scary. I'm almost scared to look down at his game log just because of how awesome it has been. Averaging around 20 points for the last 3 games. His floor is similar to Josh Jacobs, similar to Darren Waller at 12. Like 10 points is probably his floor for the entire year. Yeah, he's only had less than 10 points twice for the entire year. And this is the tight end position. That is insane, and that is super scary. Oh my goodness, Travis Kelce, jeez. This draft pick really paid off for people this year. Grabbing Travis Kelce at the end of the 2nd round, I really believe, he is probably going to be a 1st round pick next year. So kudos for Von like Donkey Kong for having the foresight to pick him up. My philosophy most of the time is to lean towards running back during the first couple of rounds, but yeah, if you picked a tight end, if you picked Travis Kelce early in your first couple of rounds this year, it really paid off for you, and it's really paid off for Von like Donkey Kong. And yeah, we are very scared of Travis Kelce. Going over to our flex, this is kind of tough for us. I talked about it a little bit when we talked about Cooper Kupp, but yeah, Seattle, that is a surprisingly tough matchup the last few games. The second half of the year, their defense has really picked it up. And Robert Woods, Mr. Reliable himself, he has been pretty decent, even against really tougher matchups. At New Jersey, he did put up some points, but that game was kind of weird. That game did not follow the script that most people had in mind. But against San Francisco, a few weeks ago, he did put up a solid floor at 12 points. And against Tampa Bay, he put up 24 points. But I didn't even realize, looking back to week 10, he did put up a bit of a stinker at 6 points against Seattle during week 10. So as of right now, we do have Robert Woods in our flex, but this is a shaky spot at best. I might swap him out for a couple of players. Right now, if we go down to my bench, we do have the option of putting in Chris Carson, but Chris Carson is up against the Rams defense. So the Rams defense has been elite for the last, for the entire year. They've been pretty elite. So the only saving grace for Chris Carson is that he is used during the passing game. But another wrinkle in this decision is that, a wrinkle in my forehead that is, about thinking about this decision is that Rashad Penny has also been activated off of the PUF and off of the injured reserve. So they might start working him in with Carlos Hyde, and that might eat into Chris Carson's workload here, particularly since he's been kind of banged up for the second half of the season. But he is an option that we could consider, and we could easily swap in there for Robert Woods. But the guy that I think is really sticking out to me is J.K. Dobbins. They did sit Mark Ingram. He was a healthy scratch last week, so they are relying on. Oh, that's not J.K. Dobbins. That was Deontay Johnson. But anyways, J.K. Dobbins. They have sat. They are relying on just Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins for their running back core here, and that has been great. But and they do have a solid matchup here against the Giants. Although the Giants did play well against Nick Chubb, this is a positive, a moderate to positive matchup for J.K. Dobbins. So I want to say that the ceiling here is probably a little bit higher for Dobbins versus Robert Woods, although he hasn't really smashed looking at his previous games here. But that is a better matchup for Dobbins. And yeah, if I was going to swap out Woods today, I'd probably lean towards Dobbins. The other guy that we have that we could swap out for him is DeAndre Swift. But against Tampa Bay's run defense is super good. So, and not only that, Matthew Stafford, It's up in the air whether or not he plays this week. And not only that too, they do have COVID concerns on that team. I believe most of their coaching staff isn't going to be at this game. Their interim head coach and most of their defensive coaches are on the COVID list, and they will miss this game. So it is not looking really good for the Lions this week. And it's looking good for the Tampa Bay defense and the Tampa Bay players. Start them if you have them. But as far as the Lions team, though, it could really end up being a disastrous week for the Lions, including DeAndre Swift. That being said, let's go ahead and jump to our opponent's flex. And like I said earlier, he did pick up Antonio Gibson, which is kind of breaking my heart here because, I've drafted Antonio Gibson in this league and most of my leagues actually. I've had Antonio Gibson, and I dropped him last week because I really thought that he has turf toe and that he would not play. But he has practiced yesterday and he practiced today, both limited practices. So right now it's kind of a coin flip whether or not he plays. If he does play though, Carolina is a pretty good matchup for him. But if he does get started, there is also that risk of him re-injuring himself. Turf toe is a really touchy injury and can be aggravated really easily. We'll see, but yeah, I'm really kicking myself for dropping Antonio Gibson last week. I really should have dropped somebody else for Tony Pollard other than Antonio Gibson. And you know what? If he ends up having a good game this week, that's just karma on us. Knock on wood that it doesn't come to this. But if he ends up playing and having a good week, that's just fantasy karma on us. And yeah, hopefully Washington, they play it safe and they just let him rest up and get to 100%. Next year, I really think that I will be looking to draft Antonio Gibson again. He looked really good this year, and I think that the potential for the team is getting better. They really do need a quarterback, but they really seem to be playing well with Ron Rivera as their head coach, and that team is very much headed in the right direction. So, but anyways, I'm moderately concerned with Antonio Gibson, and moderately heartbroken that he is playing against us during the fantasy championship. Looking at the bench here real quick, in case Antonio Gibson doesn't play, the only guy that he could start is J.D. McKissic, that is. And you know what? If Antonio Gibson doesn't play and J.D. McKissic is started here, this would be a solid start for J.D. McKissic. I'd want to say he'd probably be a low-end running back too, like probably around the top 20 running backs, which is pretty solid in your flex. Again, pretty solid in your flex. So yeah, I believe that pretty much goes over most of the skill positions. Looking over at our kicker and defense, yeah, we do have Younghoe Koo. He's been tearing it up. What can we say? We can't really say much more that hasn't already been said about Younghoe. He's been easily the number one kicker for fantasy for the entire season. I'm glad to have him on our squad, and I'm proud to start him, I dare say, for this fantasy last week. No concerns whatsoever about Younghoe. Knock on wood that we're not jinxing ourselves. And for our defense, we've been sitting on the Cleveland defense for the last 3 weeks now. And the Jets have been looking better. And we do have the option of starting somebody else. We do have two other defenses here. We do have Chicago, who is a really solid defense against that really poor Jacksonville offense or Jacksonville team. And you know what? If James Robinson does not play this week, if he is held out, he is hurt. So he is questionable to play. I believe he is having limited practices. But if he doesn't play, then, I might pivot to Chicago here just because the Jets looked pretty good last week. And I'm kind of concerned whether or not they're motivated to try to rack up another win, especially since now they have already given up the number one draft pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So if the Jets do have signs of life and have signs that they will play hard, and if the Jacksonville Jaguars are content on losing and and solidifying that number 1 pick and sitting James Robinson, I very well may pivot to Chicago here. Looking over to the other side though, it looks like he has the stack of Fairbairn and the Houston defense. Fairbairn, you know what, I haven't really been paying attention. He looks like a pretty average kicker here. I'm not too concerned about Kaime Fairbairn. And the Houston defense, they do have a solid matchup against Cincinnati, although like the Jets, Cincinnati has shown signs of life. They did beat the Steelers last week, so you know, maybe somebody on Houston will start doing TikTok dances on you know, their logo again and fire up Cincinnati, hopefully. Fingers crossed. I'm not holding my breath for it, but I want to say probably a solid top 12 play here against Houston. And you know that, you know, he is starting Houston mostly because we play defense here. You know, I'd really feel a lot more concerned if he was starting Chicago or starting or Washington, the Washington football team here. Both a lot better defenses than the Houston Texans here. So you know, not to pat myself on my own back here, but yeah, that's the reason why I gave up those spots to pick up those defenses, precisely for these reasons. And you know, hopefully it pays off for us, knock on wood here. Like I said earlier in the video, in the beginning of the video, it's really looking like we have a mountain to climb here. All of the explosive players, or the big explosive players I should say, are on this squad, on Von Like Donkey Kong squad. Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, the two best at their position, for fantasy anyways. And you know what, real life it's debatable against the MVP race is between Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes, but for fantasy concerns, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce are on the top of the list by far. And then Alvin Kamara in a smash matchup there. 3 very explosive players, 3 players who could easily win your week by themselves with an explosion of points. And yeah, this is what it comes down to. This is championship week. We couldn't really expect anything less. You know, the people who make it to this far are going to have really good teams. If you have a bad team, then you're not making it to your fantasy championships. And that is very much the case this week for us as well in my league here. So that being said, I think that pretty much covers everything. Thanks again so much for watching this episode of Vin Plays Fantasy Football. Thanks again for those of you who have maybe seen a few of these episodes and have been on this journey with me. Again, my name is Vin. I like to play games. And everybody have a happy holidays, have a Merry Christmas, and I'll see you next time.